My name is Sloan Hart, 29 years old. The list started innocently in early December, 3 bullet points in my notes app that grew into something careful enough to feel like hope. For Mom, a soft green scarf from a tiny online shop, the exact hue of the sweater she wore every Thanksgiving. For Dad, a stainless thermos with a locking lid because the one he used at work always leaked into his briefcase. For Haley's boys, a dinosaur hoodie and a beginner puzzle that lights up when you fit the last piece. For Haley's husband, because pretending is easier when you plan it, knit gloves and a bottle of hot sauce with a flaming skull. Ridiculously spicy, the label promised, the kind of thing he'd brag about and never actually finish. I wrapped everything myself the night before Christmas Eve on my kitchen table like it was an altar. Brown paper, twine instead of ribbon, tiny hand-drawn stars on the tags. I slipped little notes under the yarn, not big speeches, just the small remembering that says, I see you. You have a place. My roommate helped load the bags into my trunk the next morning. You'll be back tomorrow? She asked, leaning in the cold doorway. Probably the 26th, I said, attempting a shrug that hid how much I wanted to get it right this time. I hadn't been home last year, or the year before. This was the year I would show up without drama, without asks, with only the simplest gift, effort. The drive should have taken 2 hours. It took nearly 3.5. Freezing rain started at the state line and stitched the windshield into a smear. I passed 2 cars in the ditch, and a third angled into a fence as if it had been trying to leave the road on purpose. I stopped once for gas and coffee, sat in the car for 5 minutes, and let the heat haze up the glass, then merged back into a world that had decided it wanted to be ice. By the time I turned onto my parents' street, the houses looked like a commercial. Wreaths precise enough to have rulers behind them, strings of lights soft on snow that had gathered on the hedges like quiet. For a moment, and this is how dangerous memory is, I imagined walking into my mother's cinnamon, my father's laugh, Haley complaining about the oven but smiling at me anyway. For a moment, the whole thing was a postcard you could step into. I left the bags in the car and walked to the porch with just my purse, planning to bring the gifts in after the hello. I rang the bell and heard the living room before I saw it. The TV too loud, the quick detonation of laughter, the smooth, jittery sound of wrapping paper pretending to be excitement. I was already smiling when the door opened. Haley. The door stopped halfway like the house itself had changed its mind. Haley stared at me the way you look when a salesperson knocks at dinner. We're kind of doing immediate family only, she said. It took a second to understand the grammar, how those words could insist I was not the we, that family had become a club with a list I didn't write. I looked past her because I'm still myself. Mom sat on the couch with one of the mugs I'd sent her last year. Dad held a plate and said something to someone on the TV. No one turned toward the door. No one said, "Who is it?" No one noticed I existed in the space their heat was making. "What are you talking about?" I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. Not yet angry, not yet anything, just stunned. She repeated it, softer, like she was trying not to embarrass me. Not angry, not kind. Immediate family. Behind her, the laugh track did the job my father used to. I nodded like an extra in someone else's scene. I turned around and walked back down the steps carefully, because the freezing rain was making everything slick. My hands shook when I opened the car door. I don't know if it was cold or adrenaline or the way humiliation turns into a physical thing when there are witnesses, even if no one is watching. I drove to the CVS at the edge of town and sat in the parking lot under a streetlight that made a circle on the hood of my car like it had chosen me. I thought about leaving the bags on the porch, thought about texting Mom to come out alone, thought about who would open the door if I rang it again and how many people it would take to believe a person who wanted to be there. Instead, I drove home through a storm that had decided to stay. It was still snowing by the time I climbed the stairs to my apartment with the gifts still in the car. I didn't take off my coat. I set my purse on the counter and opened my laptop like I was clocking in for a job I finally knew how to do. No announcements, no messages, just method. Prime, leave household, remove payment. Netflix, sign out all devices, change password. Disney Plus, remove profiles. Spotify. Family, family revised. Costco, cancel additional cards. Wi-Fi account. Haley used at her office, remove authorized user. Grocery delivery discount, unshare. Shared photo archive where I paid to keep everyone's high-res memories safe. Permissions revoked. Calendar with birthdays and dentist appointments and soccer tournaments. Leave group. Password manager. Rotate. Lock. Rotate again. Each click was small and quiet and unforgiving. Each one was a door closing on a room no one had paid rent in. By the time I washed my face and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and sat down on the floor next to the tiny fake tree I never plug in, it was nearly midnight. The apartment was cold because I hadn't turned on the heat. I liked it that way. It felt appropriate, the kind of cold that keeps you clear. I slept badly, the kind of sleep where your brain keeps trying to wake you up because it thinks there's a test in the morning. At dawn, my phone started vibrating with the performance of concern. Haley, where did you go? Mom, are you okay? Are you still coming? Dad, Facebook sticker of a grumpy cat holding a sign. Holidays, am I right? The family chat lit up like a tree plugged into the wrong outlet. They had no idea. They thought I was sulking, being sensitive, taking things personally the way women are accused of when they dare to have a pulse. They didn't know I had already begun something they couldn't walk back with a casserole and a story about miscommunication. I made coffee and watched the snowfall. The bags of gifts were still by the kitchen table under a throw blanket. Like evidence of a crime, I wasn't sure how to report. I told myself I'd decide what to do with them after the second cup. By 10, my phone had rung 7 times. 2 voicemails from Mom, 1 breathless, 1 patient, 1 from Dad pretending to be light. I didn't listen. I let the quiet teach me something. Around noon, I did listen. Not to fix anything. To know where the next line would be drawn. Mom's voice cracked in the middle of her apology, like a bridge does when someone jumps on it to test the engineering. She said she didn't want the day to end like this. She said they were coming over. At 1:07 p.m., someone knocked. I looked through the peephole and let myself stand there for a full second, just looking. My parents. No Haley. Mom held a grocery bag with something in foil. Dad clutched a grocery store poinsettia, already wilting at the edges. He had a frozen pie tucked under his elbow like a document. We just wanted to see you, Mom said when I opened the door. Spend the day together, even if it's like this. I let them in. They stepped into my apartment like it belonged to a stranger they wanted to make a good impression on, eyes scanning the photos on the wall, the small plant that refuses to die, the tiny tree in the corner that I still didn't plug in. They sat at the edge of the couch. Mom started with the soft lies. Haley didn't tell us. We didn't know. You know we would have... And then stopped because we both knew the end of that sentence. Dad turned on the TV and muted it, the picture moving without sound like an old habit learning how to behave. I didn't respond. I just waited to see how far they were willing to go. At some point, Mom asked if she could put the casserole in the oven. I nodded. Dad cracked a joke about the neighbor who snores in the elevator. We pretended together for 20 minutes in a way that felt like everyone was trying not to spill something. When the timer beeped, I stood and walked to the kitchen. I pulled the bags of gifts from under the blanket and placed them in front of them, one by one. I didn't say anything. They opened them carefully, like the gifts themselves might break whatever this was. Mom's hand shook when she unfolded the green scarf. Dad ran his thumb over the thermos lid like he'd never seen a mechanism before. They read the small notes. And for a minute, the air in the room changed shape. You didn't have to do this, Mom said, which in our family is how you say thank you without admitting you didn't deserve it. We ate the casserole with small bites and watched a muted movie and floated through a day that couldn't decide if it was a holiday or a hostage situation. As the afternoon dimmed, Mom made cocoa and Dad seemed to remember how to sit on a couch like it was home. I almost believed we could be the version of us I'd written when I was 13. Then came the shift so smooth it would have gone invisible if I hadn't spent the morning changing passwords. So, Dad said casually, as if he were asking about weather, Haley told us some stuff isn't working. The Netflix, the Amazon. Is that just a glitch? I didn't flinch. No, I said, it's not a glitch. They paused, recalibrating. Then came the catalog. How hard this year has been. How Haley has 2 kids and needs the help. How they didn't realize I felt so distant. How we can fix this together. The pitch was gentle and practiced. Thread me back in with care and vocabulary until I remembered my role. I nodded in the right places and told them I'd think about it. I said maybe I could put things back the way they were. Maybe. You can learn a lot from the way a person exhales when you hand them a maybe. By 10, Mom asked if she could sleep in the spare room. Dad asked for a blanket for the couch, as if ritual could bless this into meaning. I went into my room and shut the door and let myself believe for exactly 2 minutes that I had done something right, that this is how love works. You make yourself smaller until it fits. I should have known better. December 26th hadn't arrived yet. I woke to the sound of my kettle knocking against itself, the heating element stuttering, like it wasn't sure it wanted to be useful. Christmas morning was a gray sheet pulled across the window, quiet enough that I could hear a neighbor's laugh drift up the stairwell and then cut off, like somebody remembered to be polite to the walls. The gifts sat where I'd left them, half hidden under a throw blanket, like a party that refused to admit it was over. I didn't turn on the heat. I wrapped the blanket tighter, sipped coffee that went lukewarm too fast, and let the silence move through the apartment the way a tide does when it's deciding if it wants to take something with it. My phone trembled on the counter at respectable intervals. Mom's number, Dad's, Haley's, repeating like a carousel I wasn't buying a ticket for. I let each call roll into the same pile of nothing. At 1:07 p.m., a knock at the door, 3 measured taps, the way Dad always did it, like he expected you to meet him halfway. I checked the peephole and, for a second, just watched them stand in the hallway like actors waiting for a cue. No Haley. Mom's hair frizzing at the edges. Dad's lips pressed into a line that meant he'd rehearsed something and misplaced the script. I opened the door. We looked at each other like people at a crosswalk. "We just wanted to see you," Mom said, soft and careful. She lifted the bag in her hands a little, as if weight could prove intent. "Spend the day together, even if it's like this." "Like what?" I asked, and immediately hated how it sounded. Smaller than I felt, older than I wanted. Dad held up the poinsettia and a frozen pie like admission fees. I moved aside. They stepped in on tiptoe, as if the floor might complain. They took in the apartment the way tourists look at a landmark. Photos, plant, couch, tiny tree unplugged in the corner. Dad set the pie on the counter and turned the TV on. Mute. Mom asked if she could put the casserole in the oven. We all did the thing. Offer, acceptance, motion. It's amazing how much choreography can look like love. While the oven hummed, they sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded like students. Mom started with warm-up lies. "Haley didn't tell us. We didn't know you were coming. You know we would have." Each sentence stepped up to a cliff and refused to jump. Dad nodded on cue, did the small laugh he keeps for dental receptionists and airplane aisles. He didn't look at me until the movie reached the part where the protagonist remembers what she should have known all along. I stood, pulled the bags from under the blanket, and set them in front of them. "Merry Christmas," I said, and it landed like a drop of water in a room that had forgotten what sound was. Mom opened hers first, fingers on the yarn, the careful unfold of paper, the small inhale at the color of the scarf. Dad turned the thermos in his hands, thumb finding the locking mechanism like a puzzle. They read the notes. Mom's eyes went wet and glossy the way ice does before it becomes dangerous. "You didn't have to do this," she said, which is how we say thank you without indicting ourselves. We ate casserole with the TV mouthing snow and fake miracles. Dad told a story about a neighbor who snores on the elevator. I pretended it was funny the way a person pretends they forgot the end of a story they wrote. Mom offered cocoa, and I let her make it. I even told her where I keep the good mugs, the ones I almost save for company I don't have. It could have held. If we had stayed in the shallow water, we might have spent the day without anyone drowning. But that's not what people like us do. We drift. "So," Dad said, examining the clasp on the thermos as if it had broken the news to him, "Haley said some of the accounts aren't working. The Netflix, the Amazon. Is that a glitch?" He said it like weather. I set my mug down. "No," I said. "It's not a glitch." A pause. Micro-expressions gathering like birds. Mom nodded, as if they'd practiced for this one. "It's been a hard year, honey," she said, because the first thing a person like her does when she cannot refute a fact is put a blanket of vague on it. "Haley's got the boys, and it's a lot. We didn't realize you felt so far. We can fix it." She found Dad's eye. Together. The words sat between us like a chair nobody offered. I didn't explain the difference between sharing and siphoning. I didn't rehearse all the nights I'd put groceries on my card because someone's billing cycle had conspired with their brain fog. I didn't say, "You can't lock a door in my face and then ask me to pay for the house." I just said, "I'll think about it. Maybe I can put some things back." Relief bloomed across their faces like a time lapse. Mom squeezed my knee the way she did when I was 12, and she wanted me to pretend to like a dress. Dad exhaled like an exam he thought he failed had been curved. They left their bags by the door as if moving in were a natural side effect of being allowed. By 10, Mom asked if she could take the spare room. Dad asked for a blanket for the couch. They thanked me, soft as tissue paper, and I nodded because no one tells the lighting crew what the script used to be. I shut my bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed and let the possibility cross the room and sit next to me. Maybe I had done something right. Maybe love is a muscle you can coax back to life with quiet and patience and small offerings. Maybe being the bigger person wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was a job that finally paid me back. I should have known better. The day after is when the ice gives way. They left like people trying not to wake a house. No knock, no thank you, no, we're going. The note on the counter said, "Thanks for letting us spend Christmas together. We love you. Let's keep moving forward." Mom and Dad. I poured coffee and stared at the phrase "moving forward" until it stopped meaning anything. In our family, it means, let's not talk about the thing that broke. Let's move around it until it forgets itself. At 10:14 a.m., my phone vibrated. Haley's name. The text appeared casual, short, the way you write to someone you believe is on your side. Haley. OMG. Stacy actually believed all that. We deserve an Oscar. She's so fucking... Then the typing bubble. Then the message vanished. Deleted. But not fast enough. My thumb was faster than her PR instincts. Screenshot. Her name. Her profile picture. The words like a stain you can't pretend is part of the pattern. She'd meant to send it to someone else. Mom, probably. Maybe one of the Pilates friends who call gossip checking in. It came to me. I read it 5 times, then called Mom. She answered on the first ring. "Hi, sweetie," she said, voice already pitched to the frequency that means she knows the room is on fire and wants you to admire how calm she is while it burns. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask why. I read Haley's message out loud, slowly, like a poem you don't want misheard. The word Oscar had a shine on it I could feel through the phone. Silence. Then Mom, brisk, reaching. "Honey, she didn't mean it like that. It was a joke. You know how your sister is. She gets nervous, and..." The voice wobbled, then firmed up into something I recognized too well. "We were just relieved you opened the door again. Sometimes people say things wrong when they're grateful." "You came here to perform," I said. "You hugged me on cue. You took the cocoa, said your lines about moving forward, and left before the credits. You lied in my living room and thought I'd pay for the sequel." "Don't be dramatic," she said, which is what people say when they want your accuracy to feel like a flaw. "It's Christmas. One message shouldn't..." "It's not one message," I said. "It's 10 years and a storm." I could hear my heartbeat in my mouth. No more money, no more accounts, no more supporting the family. "What does that even mean?" she asked, genuinely confused. "We're family." "It means figure it out," I said, the way I did. She tried a new tone, like a different key might make the song work. "Let's come back. We'll talk in person. I'll bring the cookies you like." I hung up. Blocked her. Blocked Haley next. The number, her Instagram, the Facebook she narrates her virtue on. Then I went back to my laptop and pulled the last threads loose. Haley's access to the photo archive I'd been paying to store everyone's nostalgia, removed. The shared calendar, gone. The family grocery login, canceled, benefits revoked. The Wi-Fi credentials on my mother's office laptop, cleared on the back end. Every door I'd ever propped with a good intention, I shut. Deadbolt, double lock. That evening, an email from Dad. No subject line, no salutation, just a single sentence in the body. "You don't mean this. Let's talk." I closed the laptop. I did mean it. For once, I didn't rehearse how to be the bigger person. For once, I didn't calculate the optimal distance between self-respect and not being called difficult. I let the thing end without escorting it to a nicer grave. December 27th came and went with nothing but clean air. I boxed up the wine glasses they used, tossed the poinsettia before it could begin dying publicly, slid the note into the trash without a second read. I bleached the countertop and lit the candle they gave me last year in that hollow tone that reads, "As love if you squint." On the 28th, Aunt Valerie's name blinked across my screen, a blunt instrument wrapped in a floral signature. We barely speak. She didn't start with hello. "What the hell happened on Christmas?" she asked, and I sat on my kitchen floor while she told me Mom had already sent the extended family a story about how I'd cut myself off again and struggled emotionally. I told Valerie everything. The drive, the door half open, the sleepover that felt like theater, the text Haley meant for anyone but me. I read it slowly, then I forwarded the screenshot. Valerie went quiet, then said, "Send it to me in full," as if I'd have edited it for her feelings. I did. She sighed the sigh of a woman who has decided where to put her feet. "I'll take it from here," she said. There was steel in it I didn't know I'd been waiting for. By evening, my phone lit with cousins and aunts who apparently didn't need me to persuade them. "Unreal," one wrote. "I believed her when she said you were just dramatic." Another. "I used to think you were distant. I didn't see how much you were holding." Even Uncle Dave, a ghost with a grill, left a voicemail admitting they'd let Haley get away with it for years, because charming is a kind of camouflage. Haley vanished from social media like she'd fallen through a trapdoor. Mom tried a new number. I let it ring itself out. The family chat went silent as a stage after the lights drop. New Year's Eve, I made pasta and roasted vegetables, poured a glass of wine, and let the quiet stand on its own feet. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like a room after a window has been opened, air moving the way it wants to, not the way it's told. At midnight, a neighbor cheered down the hall, distant as good news you're happy for, but don't need. I stood by the window and watched snow stipple the streetlights and thought, this is what love for yourself sounds like. It sounds like a door locking that you locked on purpose. The last days of December passed in a strange, quiet rhythm, like the silence that follows an argument in a movie, right before the score swells. Only, there was no score here, just my phone vibrating itself off the counter with new numbers I didn't recognize and messages that started the same way. "I heard something about Christmas. Are you okay?" It didn't take long to find the source. Aunt Valerie called again on the 29th. "Your mother's been doing damage control," she said. No preamble, group text to the extended family. "She says you had another emotional episode, that they tried to include you, but you isolated yourself again." I let her talk, every sentence dulling me further. It wasn't even the lie that hurt. It was the familiarity, the way she'd built a narrative so quickly, like she already had the template saved. Valerie hesitated before adding, "I told her I wanted to hear your version." She went quiet after that. "She sent everyone her version first," I said. "That's what matters." "Send me the screenshot," she said simply. So I did. Haley's exact words, unedited, timestamp and all. The phrase "we deserve an Oscar" gleaming in the middle like a medal she hadn't earned. Valerie didn't respond for a while. When she did, it wasn't with sympathy. It was something sharper. "Thank you for forwarding. I'll handle this." I didn't ask how. By that afternoon, the ripple had already started. Cousin Tyler texted first. Just saw what Haley said. Unreal. Then Aunt Lynn. "I'm honestly disgusted. I believed her when she said you were overreacting." Uncle Dave, the relative equivalent of a sitcom background character, left a voicemail. "Kiddo, I don't know what to say except, I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. We thought you were just private." He paused, then sighed. "Guess you had a reason." And then the unexpected one, Liz, my cousin, who rarely took sides in anything more controversial than choosing a restaurant. "You were right." That's all she wrote. 2 words. But they landed heavier than a paragraph could. Meanwhile, Mom tried a new angle. A message from a new number at 7:16 p.m. "Haley's hurting too. Can't we just sit down and talk like family?" I didn't respond. At 7:21, a follow-up. "You're turning everyone against us." No, I thought. You're just watching what happens when I stop covering for you. By 8:12, Haley's social media began to vanish. Her Instagram disappeared first, then her Facebook, then her Pinterest, the digital equivalent of boarding up windows before a storm that's already inside the house. The next morning, Dad sent an email. No subject line, just a single sentence in the body. "You don't mean this. Let's talk." It was almost poetic in its emptiness, like someone trying to cast a spell with no words left. I didn't reply. Because I did mean it. For once, I wasn't pacing the line between being fair and being safe. I wasn't trying to fix something that kept breaking the same way. I'd let it end, and that was the first real act of love I'd ever given myself. New Year's Eve came quietly. I cooked dinner for one: pasta, roasted vegetables, a glass of wine. Outside, the city hummed faintly. No fireworks, just the occasional sound of laughter echoing down the hall from someone else's party. At midnight, I didn't make a wish. I didn't set resolutions. I just whispered something small under my breath. Enough. It wasn't a spell, it was a statement. January 2nd, the first workday after the holiday haze. I was halfway through answering emails when my phone rang. Aunt Valerie again. "You lit a fuse," she said. "The truth's out." Apparently, Haley's message had been circulating among the cousins. Valerie hadn't spread it maliciously. She just showed it to one person who needed to know. One became two. Two became a thread. By the time Mom found out, half the family chat had seen it. "She's furious," Valerie said. "Your mom's saying it was taken out of context." How do you take "we deserve an Oscar" out of context? "She says it was a joke." Of course she does. There was a pause. "Do you want me to intervene?" Valerie asked. "No," I said. "Let them spin." By January 3rd, the silence felt different. It wasn't defensive anymore. It was deliberate. A pause in a sentence that didn't need to continue. But the family didn't handle silence well. Mom called again that evening, leaving a voicemail with that brittle tone she gets when she's trying to sound like the rational one. "We understand you need space. We're giving you that. Just know we're still willing to visit if you're open to it. No pressure, but we'd like to see you." The generosity in her voice made my stomach turn, as if their presence were a gift I was lucky to receive. They still didn't get it. They thought this was about a message, a misunderstanding. They thought I'd overreacted. They didn't see the years before it, the slow erosion that turns generosity into obligation, family into currency. The next day, Valerie texted again. "Haley's rewriting history. She's telling people it was an inside joke, that you twisted it to make her look bad." I read it twice, then smiled, because of course she was. She'd always been good at that, repainting the walls after setting the fire. At 10 p.m., a new screenshot arrived from Liz. Haley had reappeared online, posting a photo of her and the kids in front of their Christmas tree. The caption was long, poetic in that self-serving way that sounds rehearsed. "Family forgiveness is hard. The holidays can be messy. Some people make private matters public when they're hurting. But I choose love, always." No names, just implication. The likes were pitiful. A few stragglers from her old crowd, a handful of pity hearts. The rest? Silent. I didn't comment. I didn't message anyone. I just opened the old family group chat, the one I'd muted weeks ago, and stared at it for a while. Dozens of unread messages stretching back years. Reminders, links, jokes, logistics, the everyday scaffolding of people who think connection is maintenance. Then I deleted it. Not archived, not muted, gone. That night, I opened my laptop again and went through every shared space left. The family photo drive, left group. Grocery delivery app, unsubscribed. Amazon household, remove my credit card. Calendar reminders, cleared birthdays. Password manager, new logins. Click by click, I erased their fingerprints from my digital life until there was nothing left but my own. On January 5th, my birthday arrived. No text, no call, no half-hearted Facebook tag from Mom. Not even the last-minute emoji Dad usually sent. And the strangest thing happened. I waited. Not out of hope, out of habit, like checking for a bruise you already know is gone. By the end of the day, the waiting dissolved into something lighter. Not happiness exactly, just clarity. They hadn't forgotten. They'd chosen the silence as punishment, still convinced it was leverage. But it wasn't, because for the first time, I didn't need them to remember me. 2 of my friends showed up that night with Thai food, a cheap bottle of wine, and a cake with crooked frosting that said 29 and unbothered. They sang off-key and laughed too loud and filled the apartment with something that sounded suspiciously like joy. When I went to bed, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel the ache I thought I would. I just felt clean. The kind of clean that comes after a storm when everything broken has finally been washed away. By mid-January, the story had stopped being theirs. Relatives had drawn their own conclusions. Haley had gone quiet. Mom had stopped calling. And in that silence, something strange happened. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. I felt free. The second half of January arrived without fanfare, the kind of cold that makes people whisper in grocery stores and walk faster between cars. My life had fallen into a rhythm that wasn't healing exactly, but something close. Mornings spent answering emails with music low in the background, evenings filled with cooking for one, and not hating the sound of my own fork against the plate. I'd started walking again, long loops around the block with no destination, no podcasts, no noise, just my breath coming out like smoke and the echo of boots on wet pavement. It was peace with edges, quiet that still remembered how to bite. On January 12th, my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Aunt Valerie again. "Thought you should know," she said, voice crisp. "Haley's trying to rewrite the story. She's messaging people privately, saying the text was taken out of context, that you overreacted and turned everyone against her." I laughed softly. "That sounds about right." "She says it was an inside joke," Valerie continued, "that you misunderstood." "Inside jokes usually require everyone inside to be laughing," I said. Valerie snorted. "You'd think?" Then, gentler, "Don't engage. She's spiraling. Let her do it in peace." I thanked her and hung up. But she wasn't wrong. Haley was spinning. 2 hours later, Liz sent me a screenshot. Haley had reactivated her Instagram and posted a photo of herself and the kids under their Christmas tree, the caption reading, "The holidays can be complicated. People make mistakes. Forgiveness doesn't mean weakness. It means grace. Hashtag family first." No names, no specifics, just enough ambiguity to make her look like the saint in her own confession. The comments were a desert. A few old church friends dropped vague hearts and, "So true." Everyone else stayed silent. Haley didn't know silence could be so loud. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, scrolling through years of texts I'd never deleted, proof of a pattern I already knew by heart. The emotional yo-yos, the sudden warmth when she needed something, the weeks of cold after I said no. It read like a script, and I had finally stopped auditioning. By morning, I made a decision. No more half-open doors. I deleted the family Google Drive, the shared grocery delivery plan, the Amazon household. Then I went through my phone and scrubbed every group chat, every contact labeled aunt, cousin, Haley's friend. The digital house cleaning took hours, but by the time I finished, the quiet felt earned. 2 days later, my birthday arrived, January 15th. No call, no text, no post, no card. I won't lie. Part of me still waited. I caught myself glancing at my phone mid-afternoon like a reflex, but the screen stayed blank. By evening, the ache dulled into something cleaner. Not relief, exactly. More like acceptance. They hadn't forgotten. They were choosing absence, like silence could still be punishment. Only now it didn't feel like loss. It felt like proof. That night, my friends showed up with takeout and a half-melted grocery store cake that said 29 and free, mostly in blue icing. They sang happy birthday off-key, and when they left, my apartment smelled like laughter and candle smoke. It wasn't family, but it was something better, something I chose. On January 18th, another ripple hit. Valerie texted again. She's trying to rally people, says she's the victim now. Be ready for noise. The noise never came, not from me, not from the cousins who'd finally seen behind her curtain. By the next morning, a message popped up from my cousin Alex, the one who'd stayed quiet through everything. "I used to think you were cold. Now I realize you were just exhausted. I'm sorry." I didn't respond right away. I just sat with it, reread it, let it sink in. People seeing you clearly for the first time isn't always comforting. Sometimes it's just strange. The last straw came on January 22nd. Mom finally broke her silence. A text. "Sloan, I hope you're happy. You've turned everyone against your sister. What does this solve?" I read it twice, then a third time, waiting for some kind of honesty to appear between the lines. None did. They still didn't get it. I wasn't turning people against anyone. I hadn't shared, threatened, or exposed anything that wasn't already theirs to own. All I did was stop covering the evidence. For years, I'd been the family's translator, converting cruelty into "she didn't mean it," selfishness into "she's just overwhelmed." I was the one who made excuses sound like empathy. And now that I'd stopped, the truth was visible, and they were mistaking the sunlight for betrayal. By the last week of January, the house felt lighter. I was cooking more, sleeping better. Even work felt easier. Fewer mistakes, fewer distractions. The quiet was no longer sharp. It had settled into something gentle. On Saturday, Liz invited me for coffee. I hadn't seen her in almost 2 years. We met at a small cafe near the river, the kind of place that smelled like rain and old paperbacks. She brought me a latte, and after a long pause said, "I've been waiting for someone to call it out." I laughed. "Call what out?" "The way Haley talks to people, the way your mom covers for her. We all saw it. We just didn't want to be the ones to break it. I stirred my coffee, the spoon clinking against the cup. And now that it's broken? Liz shrugged. Now we can stop pretending. She asked one more question before we left. How long were you carrying it before you snapped? I smiled without humor. Too long. When I got home that night, the apartment was dark except for the lamplight pooling near the couch. My phone buzzed once. Another cousin, another quiet acknowledgement. You were right. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't tell anyone. Because finally, I didn't need witnesses. Sometimes I still check the old family group chat just out of curiosity. It's quiet now, buried under months of unread messages. No one's restarted it. Maybe they're waiting for me to. Maybe they're finally realizing I won't. And that's the point. The story wasn't about punishment, it was about release. I didn't win. I just stopped playing. By February, the quiet had stopped feeling like absence and started to sound like air, the kind you don't notice until you realize you've been breathing shallow for years. The world hadn't changed, but I had. For weeks, I expected a last gasp, a new number, another attempt at emotional cleanup, Mom's voice on the phone playing diplomat while Haley hid behind her shadow. But the silence held. It was their turn to sit with it. I spent mornings doing ordinary things. Grocery runs, long showers, dishes still warm from the sink, and realizing how peaceful life feels when it's not constantly performing forgiveness. Then one evening, after a walk, I came home to find an envelope on my doorstep. No return address. I didn't have to open it to know whose handwriting curled across the front. I stood in the hallway for a full minute before finally tearing the seal. Inside was a card. Store-bought. The kind you grab at a gas station because you've already run out of words. It said, "Family isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. We still love you, even if you can't see that yet." No signature, just Mom and Dad. I slid it back into the envelope, walked it to the trash, and let it fall in without ceremony. Love that requires blindness isn't love, it's maintenance. The rest of the month unfolded quietly. Work, laundry, light. And yet every now and then, reminders appeared in small, surprising ways, echoes of a past that hadn't quite learned it was over. A Facebook memory popped up. Christmas 2017, me and Haley on the porch, both laughing at something I don't remember. I stared at the photo for a long time before deleting it. It didn't hurt, it just didn't belong anymore. That night, I sat by my window with a glass of wine and tried to imagine what Mom and Haley's house sounded like now. Maybe they avoided saying my name altogether. Maybe it had turned into a pronoun. She, her, you know who. It didn't matter. By early March, family updates came indirectly, the way gossip always does, passed through relatives who still wanted to pretend neutrality was kindness. Valerie mentioned in passing that Mom had started seeing a therapist. She says it's about empty nest stuff, she said with a smile I didn't return, but I think she's finally realizing how much she's been covering. And Haley? She's quieter now, Valerie said. Stopped posting. Keeps to herself. Good. People like Haley thrive on audience. Take that away, and they run out of air. In late March, I ran into Liz again. We met for coffee at the same Riverside Cafe. She looked lighter, too, like someone who'd stopped tiptoeing through her own family group chats. Over cappuccinos, she told me Haley had been reaching out to her, too. Small, probing texts, testing the waters. I didn't reply, Liz said. I think that's what finally gets to her. Not anger, indifference. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching snow melt into the river, the water catching bits of light like broken glass. Before we left, Liz said, "You know, I don't think you lost a family. I think you just stopped mistaking them for one." It made me laugh softly because it was true. April arrived, and with it, spring. The thaw, the uncoiling, the smell of soil instead of smoke. I planted something small on my balcony that week. Just basil and lavender, the kind of plants you have to water but not beg. Every morning I checked them before work, brushing my fingers along the leaves to release the scent. It became its own quiet ritual. There's something satisfying about tending to something that never asks you to apologize for pruning it. By summer, I could talk about it without shaking. Friends would ask, "Do you ever miss them?" And I'd answer honestly, I miss the version of them I kept hoping existed. Because that was the truth. The people I loved had been partly imagined, an echo I'd built to survive the real thing. Now I didn't need the echo. I could live with the quiet instead. On my 30th birthday, I woke up early. No calls, no texts, no family noise. And for the first time, it didn't sting. I baked myself a small cake, badly frosted, uneven on one side, but mine. 2 friends came over. We ate on the balcony. sunlight hitting the edges of our plates. At one point, one of them said, "You look different, peaceful." "I think I am," I said. "It's weird." She smiled. Peace usually is. Later that evening, when the apartment was quiet again, I found myself scrolling through old voicemails. Mom's, Dad's, even Haley's from years ago. Reminders of a time when my phone was full of noise that sounded like love. One by one, I deleted them. Not out of anger, out of completion. Some stories don't need closure. They just need to stop being told. That night, I stood by the window, city lights flickering against the dark, and realized something simple but seismic. The story wasn't about them at all. It was about me learning that peace doesn't always come with reconciliation. Sometimes peace is just distance, quiet, deliberate, and earned. I didn't win. I didn't forgive. I didn't forget. I just stopped playing a part in someone else's version of family. And that finally was enough. When I turned off the light, I caught my reflection in the window. Tired, older, softer. Free. Not fixed, not perfect. Just free.